I have never been so excited for one of these discussions with UAS International Trip Support. We're looking to the future, we're looking to our North Star for sustainability and modern aviation. I've got an amazing panel with me, so without further ado, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. From my left, Erik Lindbergh.
Thanks, Liz. My name is Erik Lindbergh. I split my time between the Lindbergh Foundation, a 45-year-old nonprofit dedicated to balancing advancing technology with preservation of the environment. We're looking at the 100th anniversary of my grandfather's flight, 2027, so we're thinking that's a huge lever to create sustainable aviation. And so I spend about 50% of my time working on that. The other half is with VerdeGo Aero, a company that we started about 6 years ago, 2016. Is that the math right? We came out as an electric aircraft company. We're building hybrid electric propulsion systems to enable robust commercial activities with electric aircraft. And I believe that this is the most exciting time that I've ever seen in my aviation career.
Thank you, Erik. The fourth evolution. Susan.
Hello, I'm Susan Ying. I'm the Senior VP of Global Partnerships and Operations for Ampaire, which is a startup started in 2016 in Hawthorne, that's Los Angeles, and it's an electrification airplane company. Electrification because we make electric airplanes that's hybrid, and also currently we have a 9-seat eco caravan that's already flying, which is the largest hybrid electric airplane. And our plan is to have the certification done by 2025. So sustainable aviation, here we go.
Going to get you all to speak a bit more to this. Abdul.
My name is Abdul. I'm the Executive Vice President for UAS International Trip Support. I'm with the company about 21 years. The company originated in Dubai back in 2000. We have branched out the past 20 years. We have offices right now out of Houston, Beijing, and Johannesburg, and we have also a lot of regional offices worldwide. Our job is to make sure those flights operate smoothly without any issues. We support them on the ground with SAF fuel, with fossil fuel, with ground handling, and other services to support the operators require when they fly internationally.
Chris.
Yes, hello, and thanks for having me here today. So my name's Courtney, Director of Advanced Air Mobility with CAE. Just a little bit about how I got here. I was 20 years helicopter pilot, 10 years in the U.S. Army, and 10 years in the U.S. Coast Guard. Operationalized a small UAS company back in 2015, then went to go work for Joby Aviation as a commercial flight operations lead, and then went to work on the Uber Elevate team. And when I was at the Uber Elevate team, that's when we reached out to CAE because we knew we needed to get a training and simulator provider into the ecosystem for advanced air mobility and electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Had an opportunity to join CAE and really lead the initiative inside CAE for advanced air mobility, and that's currently what I do with a very robust and smart team where we work with a lot of startups in advanced air mobility to help them think through training and simulation and really how they're going to operationalize their concepts in the future for sustainable aviation.
Amazing panel. Now, let's talk about what's our North Star for a sustainable, decarbonized industry. Erik, tell me.
Sustainability in aviation is incredibly hard. If it was easy, we'd have done it already, right? So what we've been doing at the Lindbergh Foundation, actually, Susan is on our board as well, helping us with this mission. We hosted a brain trust at NBAA Orlando last year and looked at all the barriers to sustainability and whether or not we could use an incentive prize to help accelerate through that. So what we've come up with is a plan to help accelerate the adoption and widespread availability of sustainable aviation fuels, and we need partners now to build that prize and then sponsor that prize so that we can move the market, the investment, the uptake agreements, all of the things that we need to achieve the kind of scale that we need, which is enormous. Not impossible, but we all need to be working on the same page in order to accomplish that. So that's kind of our keystone program at the Lindbergh Foundation as we work towards the 100th anniversary.
That's amazing. Now, Susan, where would you put your North Star?
We'll start with a vision. The vision is that the future of travel would all be sustainable and will be clean, quiet, and more affordable for all the people who are traveling. And so Ampaire wants to be there, not just to do this so that we can have sustainable aviation like, a few decades from now, but we want it like today. And we can do that today with the technologies we have, namely the hybrid electric, hybrid battery electric. And in so doing, it's not just a Ampaire solo thing. It's not just the airplane. It requires the whole ecosystem to enable this happening. So that's why the partnerships. We really want to form this partnership with the airlines, operators, as well as airports for the infrastructures, and even the energy companies, because we need the clean energies in order to put into the airplane so that all the flights will be clean and sustainable. So that's our North Star.
I am loving these North Stars, these visions. Abdul, what would be your vision for your ideal future?
Sustainability is a great initiative, has started by different companies right now. And UAS, what we are doing is try to promote this sustainability and push for operators to use more of that. So our job basically is to make sure wherever the aircraft lands, they are available SAF fuel. And UAS had taken initiative a few years back that we offer a free margin or no profit on any selling fuel, SAF fuel for our clients, just to make sure our clients or the operators in general, they are using SAF fuel. That will help, of course, keep our planet cleaner.
Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So at CAE, we train approximately 80% of the world's pilots through our flight simulators and the delivery of training. And we're all about making the world a safer place. And I view that as the North Star for advanced air mobility for what I do within CAE with my team. We want to make sure that advanced air mobility and the entry into service of these brand new, novel, and new type of vehicles is done safely. And we feel like we can do that, and we can help these companies think past type certification and entry into service by doing what we do best, where we do training needs analysis, we develop courseware, we develop curriculum, we develop flight simulators, and we really help them think past type certification. Right now in the industry, all of the OEMs are heads down, focused on type certifying their aircraft. We're there to help them think past type certification and where the rubber meets the road, where all these things enter into service from an operational standpoint.
This is really cool because this speaks exactly to what you're talking about, Susan. Give us a snapshot of today. What are some of the friction points today for you?
I wouldn't call it friction point, but points that we're all learning, because this type of technologies didn't exist before. And so first of all, we got to innovate and bring out these technologies and apply it to the airplanes, because really we're in the third revolution in our aviation, and we're doing something totally different. And so in terms of the rules making, in terms of the regulations that's governing all the designs that we must have so that it'll be safe, a lot of those don't exist yet. So we have to help and work with these regulatory agencies to make sure we can all advance fast.
Chris, you're out now, you're talking about the regulatory agencies, but you are actually talking about there's a whole new swathe of aircraft. Like, nobody really knows what that's going to quite look like, but you have to plan and train. How are you tackling that?
Yes, I think what I had mentioned before is we're currently engaged with 5 OEMs in the eVTOL space. So that's Joby Aviation, John Air Mobility, Volocopter, Vertical Aerospace, and Beta. And we do a whole host of things for these companies. But probably what's foundational for anyone that's thinking about training and simulation, if you're a new aircraft manufacturer, is what we do is we do a training needs analysis initially, right? So we evaluate all the steps that a pilot or operator needs to know and understand on that aircraft. And so once we do that, we basically generate what's called a training specification. And from that training specification, we develop the courseware, the curriculum, the course footprint, how many hours of ground school, what type of simulator, how many hours in the simulator is going to be required. And then we work with the OEM, and then we work with the authorities to have a training program that's ready to go when the aircraft enters into service. And that's really what is foundational for us, and that's what we're really good at doing, and we're helping companies think through this problem set.
And I think what's really interesting from your perspective, perhaps, Abdul, because a lot of people don't realize that a lot of your work is about the data and the relationships. So we've got new types of aircraft, we've got new specifications, new protocols. How are you thinking about this for the future and integrating this?
Right. frankly, we are looking for automation. I mean, the faster the innovation, the technology accelerate, the better our job will become easier, basically. I do recall 20 years ago where we had everything's done manually for charts, for air, for routes, for communication with the pilots, using cell phone and so on. And right now things are becoming more advanced, slowly. Of course, it's still not to the level we're expecting it. However, we see that a mix of automation and manual jobs being done but mostly the ATC routing and communication to the pilot's cockpit is done via text and FMS and just upload this information, which is it's much faster right now, and we can see this see the future going toward automation, which is of course that's going to enable us to do a better job faster, and of course going to be safer for the pilots and for the crew and for the flight in general.
And this is really interesting because there's a lot of discussion and maybe some fears around automation. And I think, Chris, more than perhaps a lot of us, you've actually had boots on the ground with this. How do you see, safety is always paramount. What are some of the challenges in integrating perhaps completely automated flight to flight that is, a big question there, to flight that is piloted with a human?
Yeah, so well, at least just for folks' situational awareness at CAE, we also deliver remote pilot training for defense customers. And so we have some expertise in this. The industry as a whole in eVTOL and advanced air mobility at some point wants to get to a point where the pilot comes off board the aircraft. There is one company out there that's pursuing that right now called Wisk. The others currently are, pilot on board with anywhere from 1 to 3 additional passengers in the back. Same skill set still applies. Yes, there's a ton of automation, like you mentioned, but ultimately it's the airmanship that's kind of the X factor. We will do everything that we do at CAE to make sure that pilots and operators are trained to the best that they can, leveraging simulation in our immersive environment. But airmanship, when you're operating in complex airspace, pick your city. Like a lot of these OEMs want to enter into various markets like San Francisco, Miami, Los Angeles. Just think how busy and dense that environment is. And it requires a level of expertise and experience to operate an aircraft safely in that. We can, host a very immersive experience for that whole process. But there is an element that requires some type of pilot operational experience to operate the aircraft safely.
Well, I think it also involves some trust that's built with the passengers as well. For example, just because it's available for flight, I don't know if I personally would trust to walk into something like that. I have a Tesla, which has autonomous driving, and I didn't even, till today, I haven't used it.
Go on.
Well, also as a pilot, I want to fly, and I don't really trust the machine. I trust it as far as it can go, but I want to watch it and make sure that it stays, in its lanes, on its approach path, etc.
Yeah, and there is that automation complacency too. And you're right, the trust is interesting because we're trusting technology, but it's going to take some time, I think, before people feel comfortable putting your kids or your family members in the back of an aircraft without a pilot on board. We're a long ways from that point.
The uncrewed planes and full autonomous, definitely this is gonna make things more complicated. However, like pilots will be out of job, but I see the contrary. Pilots definitely is gonna still continue to fly those aircraft, but not on the plane, from the ground. However, the concept is really great, but again, it's required a lot of effort from all the stakeholders community to educate the people about safety and trust such airplane to fly. This is something going to take a lot of work to have people fly full autonomous aircraft.
It's coming.
It's already here.
Well, somebody has got a big incentive to start getting people to trust this kind of aircraft and the new tech. Erik, talk to us a little bit about the work you're doing with the Lindbergh Foundation and the X Prize initiative. to get more people interested and involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look back at my grandfather's flight in 1927, flew solo from New York to Paris, changed the way the world thinks about aviation, and really ushered in that golden era of commercial aviation, right? In 1996, I was fortunate to be a part of a small team of people that launched the X Prize, a $10 million prize for the first private manned space flight. And that really generated the private spaceflight industry that we're seeing today. Musk, Bezos, and Branson are trying to sell you tickets to go into space or launch your satellite, or have government contractors send their satellites into space. So we changed the way the world thinks about spaceflight. And Spaceship One ended up in Air and Space Museum, hanging next to my grandfather's plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. And as we are looking at the 100th anniversary, you know, how do we do that again? It was incredibly empowering to be a part of that team. We should have failed. Numerous people stepped in at the last minute. It's like any sort of startup. It's really risky to have an audacious vision like decarbonizing aviation, because this is the hardest industry to decarbonize. We're mass constrained, and if it was easy, it would have been done already for competitive reasons. So we have this huge task in front of us with enormous scale and all the capex of all the change that needs to happen. So how are we going to do that? We all need to fight on the same side and build towards a sustainable future. I think we need to strive to have a New York to Paris transatlantic flight that is sustainable, hopefully before 2027, so that we can show the world, we can be the tip of the spear that says aviation is cool, we're changing, this is the most exciting time ever in aviation that I remember, and we can energize the kids who are going to live into that sustainable future. And so that's our plan at the Lindbergh Foundation, is to really build that vision and gather as much support as we can on the way to the 100th anniversary, because it was truly one of the most game-changing flights in history, according to Barry Schiff at AOPA magazine. He did a sort of a study. Super cool. So why should we not leverage that and leverage our history with the X Prize and build towards that vision as an industry, not just aviation, but the energy industry too?
So you're talking, this speaks to your point about partnerships, and I think Abdul as well. This is amazing. We've got this X Prize, we've got this incentive. You're working behind the scenes all the time to also help encourage people to take much more of an active participatory role in cleaning up the industry today.
Certainly, this is something we have realized a few years ago, and UAS is a part of this industry, and sustainability and decarbonization is something it matters to not to the operators, but also to the individuals and UAS who are part of this industry. So we've been promoting the SAF fuel across all the world, like, and especially where it's available, especially in Europe and the States, where we have some clientels already requesting us for SAF fuel, and we've been providing those, like in some location, especially in Europe, and now it's becoming more available in more location, which is going to give at least a better opportunity for operators when they fly, and this will hopefully will meet your requirement that you need to fly over the oceanic with SAF fuel, which is, we see that happening very, very soon as well.
And Susan, what you're doing too, your product line, you have something that works today too, but you're projecting into the future, and perhaps people getting involved in the X Prize can support your kind of thinking too.
Yeah, because what we're doing is not just electric, but it's hybrid electric. So we could actually, on a short route, we could save up to 70% of the fuel, namely 70% of the SAF that will be required. So really, the SAF demand is the one that we're saving. So together, electrification, SAF, and possibly even hydrogen can really help to launch this sustainable aviation future.
And to bring new pilots and new young people into the industry with the work that you're doing too, because you're going to be working with a lot of young people, I would imagine, Chris, with what you're doing.
Yeah, over time, I think initially when we stand up advanced air mobility in this new paradigm that we're in right now, it's going to be done with experienced pilots. You're going to see pilots with a helicopter background or an airplane background be brought in. They'll get their type rating and they'll get going. Over time, I think once we have data and we prove out how things are, we'll be able to reduce some of the hour requirements that are out there for Part 135 operations, which are required. It's going to take a considerable amount of data and time. So in those early days, it's going to be experienced pilots that are going to help stand up the industry. And frankly, that's important. If you remember what I talked about, the airmanship, the X factor, you do want those expertise out there so that we de-risk the chance of having a mishap while we roll out this whole brand new industry, because one mishap could set us back quite a bit. So
I'd love to know.
I just want to add one thing, because we focus so much on the pilot or the autonomous system. But another thing is that for these new technology, new airplanes, we're going to need technicians, new engineers, and people trained with those technologies. While today's mechanics or technicians tend to be more mechanical, while you need a lot more electrical background as well.
Yeah, it's an important point. We talk about that as well. There's always a lot of focus on the pilots, but the unsung heroes are the maintainers background that keep the aircraft maintain airworthiness and the aircraft ready to go. And we have a massive shortage on maintainers as well. And you're right, we're dealing with different propulsion systems, right? We're ripping out hydraulics, oil systems, fuel systems, and we're going to batteries and electrons, and it's just different, right? And so there is a different type of skill set required to maintain these aircraft. And it's something that we all continue to take into consideration.
Yeah, it's not just avionics electric system of 25 volts or something. It's actually 400, 800, 900 volts. A very high voltage.
And so for a young person who's looking at a career in aviation, back in the day, there might be a path where you'd be a mechanic, you'd be at an airfield, you'd be a bit of a grease monkey getting covered in dirt. It's not like that today, is it? No.
Well, we'll still need some grease monkeys or people doing mechanics, physical mechanics, but we're looking for electrical engineers. And that's the critical piece that everybody wants to solve, from automotive to new advanced air mobility, et cetera. And those are the people that have jobs guaranteed right out of college.
What about at UAS? What kind of young talent would you encourage to come into the industry? And because you've got, Trip Support, you hear the title, but you have got a lot of very interesting challenges, I think, in your day-to-day.
Right. Definitely there's a high demand for aviation expertise from all from all type of services, not only avionics, but also dispatchers and flight planners and operation and even ground operation. This is there's a demand for that, and definitely we see there's a shortages and there's a lot of challenges, like to find people. So this is something UAS we already realized a couple of years ago after COVID, which has created a big gap in terms of staff availability. So we have taken initiative a few years ago that we bring fresh people from school, fresh graduate school, college student. We train them, we give them all the skills and the training and qualify them to be dispatchers or an aviation expert, so they can provide services for our clientele.
And Chris, I think your simulators for the newer air vehicles are not what I'm used to seeing, where you've got these big, they're on legs and you've got the big cockpit and the environment. It's very different, I believe you were telling me.
Yep, that's correct. So at CAE, we launched a new product around mixed reality technology, and we really feel technology has evolved to a point where we can introduce new technology that's a more cost-effective way to train pilots of the future, is specifically in advanced air mobility, and specifically to speak to the scale that, depending on who you listen to, that would be required to really operationalize the space in the meaningful way that folks want to operationalize advanced air mobility. So we are looking and have created a new product, and there are other companies doing it as well and looking into it. And there's folks that are working with the authorities to try to really introduce this new technology to have a more cost-effective way to do training, and also to be able to put those simulators close to base, close to where folks would be operating them, so that they can train, rehearse, and do all the things needed to do safe operations.
Which is fantastic. So there's a whole technology involved in creating the simulators, but I would be doing the industry, the panel, a disservice if we don't speak about some actual flying. Susan, tell us what you've been up to.
So yesterday we flew in with my CFII Melanie there. We flew in Diamond DA-40 NG. And so it's a 4-seat general aviation little airplane that takes Jet A. And so we walked into the FBO in North Las Vegas airport, and we said, well, we would like some Jet A fuel. And everybody probably thought that we had a business jet or something. And I say, oh, by the way, we just need 12 gallons of fuel. So,
And you've done some pretty cool flying, though, haven't you? You've gone from long haul, many hops in this tiny little aircraft.
yeah. So the real reason why is because I wanted to get an electric airplane at first, which is same as a DA-40, but with an E in front. That's all electric. And so that airplane is still doing its certification, so it won't be available for yet another year. So I said, meanwhile, I could get this little airplane with the same airframe. And so I searched around. A new airplane is going to be another 2 years. I wasn't going to wait that long, so I say, well, I'll just get a used airplane. And turns out that in the U.S., that same airplane used is almost the same price as a new airplane. So I searched around globally and found one in Qatar. And so I bought this airplane from a sheik in Qatar. And then the next thing is to bring it back. And that's the challenging part, because flying in the U.S. versus flying in the Middle East and Europe and Canada is very, very different. Here, we're really blessed that all the airports, public airports, the landing fees, very, very minute. And during the daytime, you don't even have to pay landing fees. And air traffic management, in Europe, you have to pay for that. In the Middle East, even more. And in the U.S., once again, you don't pay for it. So we found out a lot of the differences there, and also challenges in terms of, communication and so on. So, flying business jets, you don't really get that because you're way above, over there. But general aviation is quite a difference. And so I really appreciate that question.
Indeed, Susan, I agree with you. Flying a small jet is more challenging than flying a business jet or a commercial jet as well. Because of the altitude, because of the, you still require the same services, everything that the bigger jet require. However, the authorities, especially in Middle East, Africa, or Asia, they require special permits for low altitude aircraft than flying a business jet.
And if there's one person who's done the gamut of different kinds of flying, it's you, sir. Tell us about the flying bit and how that excites you and keeps you motivated.
Yeah, I think too, in speaking to our space specifically, so I've flown in San Francisco for about 4 years, a helicopter, and I've flown in the Miami environment and other places, but those are the two big markets that Advanced Air Mobility wants to put eVTOLs in. And it's complicated. You have busy airspace, you have to keep your head on the swivel, there's other traffic, there's other non-compliant actors out there. There's routing, there's air traffic control conversations that have to happen at certain times. There's weather, localized weather that you have to contend with, and it's complicated. And I keep going back to this airmanship piece, but it's a big deal. And you got to be able to aviate, navigate, and communicate in very, very busy environments. And that requires somebody with a degree of experience. And so, yeah, that's something that needs to be taken into consideration as people think to operationalize this whole concept and to do it safely.
And what we're hearing from everybody is that there are so many cool jobs, so many amazing challenges, and to do it in a clean way and keep this wonderful industry in the air, decarbonized. Erik, let's lead to this new amazing flight that you're about to create, and perhaps you can speak a little bit about the one that you've already performed.
Well, I haven't really let that cat out of the bag yet.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have to.
No,
We
it's
can-
all good. I think in 2002, I flew nonstop from San Diego to St. Louis to New York to Paris on the 75th anniversary of my grandfather's flight in a small single-engine 4-seat aircraft, a Lance Air. Used it to raise $1 million for the X Prize, another $1 million in kind, and 500 million media impressions before social media. So they were real. And all of that was aimed at the future of flight, space flight, with the X Prize. And what we were able to do with that, as I mentioned, was to change the way the world thinks about space flight and sort of opened up that industry. We want to do that again with the 100th anniversary of my grandfather's flight. And so I've been doing a little feasibility study while here at NBAA-BACE, and last May at NBAA-BACE. And it looks interesting. I think there have been some sustainable-ish flights, Solar Impulse, and some SAF flights in big airliners from New York to Paris. But I'm talking about something that can really shift the way we move around the planet sustainably, that moves the dime, and is the tip of the spear of a communications campaign that really inspires kids to get into aviation, to see that sustainable future of aviation, because it's going to be really hard. And so I'm thinking about it. I'm not all the way there, but I'm looking at it very closely.
That is fantastic. So if you could each say one moment in your day that would inspire a young person to come into this industry and become part of this mission, or one key thing that you can think of. Abdul, put you on the spot.
I mean, the sky is the limit. Definitely, a new entrant into the aviation industry, they will find great opportunities and even sustainable jobs for a long time. And they're with the automation, with the new electric aircraft and hydrogen and a lot of solar power aircraft and so on. This is something that might happen in the future as well. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to consider the aviation industry. And as discussed earlier, there's not only like pilotings and technology, however, there's avionics and engineering and so on. So definitely someone should really consider, because this is the future where we are going with.
Thank you. Chris?
You know, I would say this is probably, I've only been on the planet for so long, but probably the most exciting time in aviation in a very, very long time. There is plenty of work, plenty of jobs, shortage of maintainers, shortage of pilots, salaries are good, and I don't see when that's changing anytime soon. And so in addition to that, you have all this new innovative stuff, what we're talking about today with electric aviation and sustainable aviation, to the stuff going on in space. I mean, there's just an endless amount of opportunities in aerospace and aviation today. Personally, I have a son that's at Embry-Riddle right now. I look at the next generation, which is nice. I've got another one going into aviation. He's an Air Force ROTC, and I'm excited for his future in aviation because there's just endless possibilities right now. He's coming in at a fantastic time. So anyone that's looking to come into aviation, it doesn't get any better than this right now to enter in. There's just so much opportunity out there, and you really should be exploring a pathway into aerospace, into aviation at this particular time, especially for this new cohort of folks coming of age into this space.
Awesome. Erik?
I love what you guys are saying. I think the unspoken elephant in the room is that we have a target on our backs, and if we don't make aviation sustainable, somebody else might be sitting in the left seat dictating where we can fly, when we can fly, and how we can fly, or if we can fly. And so if we don't proactively address that, and we need that next generation, then we'll be left not in the pilot's seat. And so I think that's the key to our future. It's you young folks out there that are looking, we need you, and this is a really difficult task to make aviation sustainable, but for our kids, for their kids, we need to do this.
What a mission. Susan?
Well, it's hard to be the last because they were all right, and also I love what they say. The thing is that it's a huge challenge. It's probably the biggest challenge in the human history. And so in order to face that, I think all the young people believe that you need to believe in what you do and don't let anybody talk you out of it. And I just wanted to maybe quote one thing that I think is really the most important thing, is that those who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the people who do. And Steve Jobs said that. So every one of you can really change the world, but you have to believe in it and then go do it.
I love it.
Awesome.
Love
What a way to end. Thank you so much to this illustrious panel. We'll leave contact details for everybody. Thank you so much. You've all been amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.